Aktion T4 presentation by John Sayles. As most of you know, the Holocaust was a period of time in World War II in which Nazi Germany decided to push their final solution, or the elimination of anyone deemed as a financial burden or dangerous to society. However, by danger to society, they meant danger to Aryan people. Aryans were blonde-haired, blue-eyed, able-bodied, and mind Nordic individuals who, in the Nazis' eyes, were the rightful race to live. But how did this ideology even begin? The belief that entire groups of people should be destroyed can't come out of nowhere. Unfortunately, the answer to this question lies within Aktion T4 in its beginnings. After the end of World War I, the seeds of racial hygiene, better known as eugenics, began to appear within health education, government-funded research, and German policies. What was widely believed by people who are pro-eugenics was that people who are unfit to live and are still kept alive nonetheless are an interference with natural selection. To propel this idea, it was believed that the correct course of action was to increase birth rates for valuable families. And this was done through the creation of government policies like tax benefits, or by campaigning for eliminating the use of genetic poisons like alcohol, tobacco, and syphilis. Consequently, the idolization of valuable birthing also led to many negative policies centered around people who did not give birth or people who were deemed unfit to have children. This process of thought led to distaste toward homosexuals, abortions, and non-Aryans. However, what would actually lead to what we know as Aktion T4 began under a policy created by the Nazi Party, the law for the prevention of genetically diseased offspring. This law, targeting what Nazis determined as genetically inferior people, mandated the sterilization of any man and woman under the following conditions: feeble-mindedness, schizophrenia, manic depressive disorder, Huntington's chorea, which is basically dementia, genetic blindness, genetic deafness, severe physical deformities, and chronic alcoholism. Under this law, an estimated 400,000 Germans were sterilized, either by vasectomy or tubal ligation, which, by the way, was a very invasive procedure with a high mortality rate. Unfortunately, the persecution of the genetically unfit was to become even worse. Approximately 2 years before the Holocaust, a much more extreme policy of sterilization began to take place, known as the euthanasia program. This program, with the help of the Nazi Reich, called for the systematic murder of any institutionalized patients who presented disabilities within Germany. The beginning measures of this program targeted children. By the decree of the Reich Ministry of the Interior in August of 1939, and led by Nazi physician Karl Brandt, all physicians, nurses, and midwives were to note any newborns or children under the age of 3 who showed signs of severe disability. Following this, public health officials began promoting parents with disabled children to admit their offspring to special pediatric clinics in Germany and Austria. At that point, while the age maximum began at 3, the operation quickly expanded to any person under the age of 17. During the entirety of the war, an estimated 10,000 children were admitted and killed in these clinics, either by starvation or lethal doses of medicine. The success of these programs is what ultimately led to the solution to German racial hygiene. In an effort to broaden their grip on the populace, Adolf Hitler signed a secret decree passing off Aktion T4 in September 1939. This program would demand the immediate killing of any adult disabled patients living in institutional settings, led by Chancellery Director Philipp Bohler and physician Karl Brandt. The killing operation created 6 gassing centers disguised as pediatric clinics in Brandenburg, Grafenegg, Bernburg, Sonnenstein, Hathiam, and Hadamar. By sending out the questionnaires disguised as useless information packets to all public health officials, hospitals, mental institutions, and nursing homes, the Nazis gained information on where any disabled residents in Germany were living. Beginning in January 1940, any people labeled on the questionnaire who were actually disabled were shipped off by bus or train to gassing stations for murder. By using bottled carbon monoxide gas emitted during showering, patients were killed within hours of entering these facilities. The bodies were then burned and sent back to the family as urns under the guise that the patient had died a natural death. Until the eventual halting of Aktion T4 in the final days of war due to Nazi plans being exposed to the public, it had murdered over 250,000 individuals. The way in which the victims of T4 were murdered and the proposition of eugenics were essential to the Holocaust, as it gave many of the ideas for efficient and systematic killing and spread the idea that there was only one group of people who deserved to live. If you were to take anything away from this tragedy, it is to be watchful towards the signs of institutionalized murder and recognize the importance of human beings. Everyone deserves the right to live, and no one has the right to decide whether a living person is useful or a burden. Thank you for listening.